Welcome to Google Atlanta's first Authors at Google Talk. It's a bit of an accomplishment for us. Today we have Thomas Huynh, who will be addressing the ongoing relevance and the contemporary applications for Sun Tzu's Art of War. Thomas has an MBA from Vanderbilt University and has been studying the art of war for 20 years. In 1999, he founded Sunshi.com, which is now regarded as one of the foremost resources on the internet for the art of war. In 2008, his The Art of War, Spirituality for Conflic was published, and this book is his new translation of the art of war combined with his annotations. Please welcome Thomas Huynh.
Well, thank you, Mike. Appreciate the introduction. Okay, so get used to this. Well, anyways, like what Mike was saying, my name is Thomas Huynh. I'm the founder of Sunshi.com. And the title of my presentation today is Sun Tzu and You, because I want to emphasize the fact that despite Sun Tzu's being 2,500 years old, it's still relevant to our modern world, and at the individual level, it's relevant to you as well. So I thought I'd clear up and discuss the elephant in the room. What is it in it for you to spend some time with me here today? Well, you'll learn a little bit about Sun Tzu's The Art of War and what the big deal is about. You might have heard about the art of war through a newspaper article, or maybe through a friend. He might have recommended it to you. I've heard professors would recommend the book to their students. Well, to me, it's a big deal, and we'll find out a little bit about it in our presentation. And hopefully you will see clearly how it can help you in your life, because we all experience conflict and competition in all of our lives. Okay, so the flip side of the coin is what's in it for me? Why am I here spending the time with you here today? Well, I understand. I think Mike promised that Google will change their algorithm where Sunshi.com would be number one. Anyways, just kidding on that. Seriously, this is what I like to do. I like to share Sun Tzu's The Art of War to as many people as possible, because I think the book can be a big benefit to everyone who reads it. And I've been doing this at Sunshi.com since 1999. And before that, I've studied the book for 10 years. And so it's been about 10 years since we started Sunshi.com, and that's pretty much the same time Google was founded. It's quite interesting there. Having been born in Saigon, Vietnam, as you know, it's a war-torn country. It's better. It's still a communist country. But you can kind of understand why the subject of war fascinates me, and it's an important issue to me. And if all political leaders, and even tyrants, if they were to read and understand and even apply the book, I believe that all existing wars would literally stop, literally. And in fact, all future wars would be prevented altogether. So that's how much I view the art of war and how important it is in our society. What this presentation is not, I review it with you real quick. It's not about China. I know it's a hot topic nowadays, but unless it's related to Sun Tzu, we're not going to talk about China. We're not going to talk about what are the best translations out there, the Chinese characters and whatnot. These two subjects, these two items, you have very, very good experts on these two items. And so some of them are part of Sunshi.com. My role at Sunshi.com is more of a liaison between the scholars and the general reader. We won't be going through every concept of the art of war. It'll take too much time. This is just to get your feet wet. And most definitely, I won't be changing your belief system, if you have a religion or something like that. I won't be trying to do that. If anything, Sun Tzu's teachings would only complement whatever you believe in. Okay, so this presentation, there's only one very simple goal, and that is to get you interested and start reading about Sun Tzu's The Art of War, and then, perhaps understand it a little bit and ultimately apply it to your life. Because again, I believe it will be a big benefit. Okay, let's discuss about the background behind Sun Tzu and his Art of War book. Okay, what we know now as China, back in 500 BC, is what they called the period of the spring and autumn period. It was composed of 13 separate states. And Sun Tzu was born in the state of Qi, and he was later employed by the state of Wu. And he wrote The Art of War, kind of like a resume, what we consider a resume now, to be employed by the state of Wu. And so when the ruler of Wu was reading this, he was very impressed. I mean, this is his philosophy on warfare, how you would approach warfare. What became as The Art of War indeed was the earliest work on military strategy. Okay, so a lot of people, when they envision Sun Tzu, excuse me, I'm going to drink a little bit. When they envision about Sun Tzu, they're thinking, some old guy with a long beard or whatnot. But he was only about 30 years old when he wrote The Art of War. And you might be thinking, man, that seems a little bit young to know anything about war. But consider this. His father was an accomplished general. His grandfather was a provincial governor. And their entire family is very focused on military. So it's not unlike Mozart. A lot of people think Mozart is a genius, and he is. But his father was a worldwide famous composer. And his father literally quit his job to focus on little Wolfgang, trying to help him study music and whatnot. And so by the age of 15, Mozart was composing his own music. Well, this is Sun Tzu at age 30. And so by this time, you know that he's studied all the past battles. He's gone with his father to know the inner workings of the army. And so, but of course the proof is in the pudding. Is he competent at that age? Well, of course he was hired by the ruler of Wu. And what he did was, the state of Wu was one of the smallest, if not the smallest, of all the 13 states. So they had very limited resources. Yet, he was able to help them capture the capital city of the largest state of the 13 states, the capital city of Ying. And so everybody took notice after that. He said, man, who is this guy? I want to know a little bit about him. And so The Art of War was treasured from day one. So it's never been lost or burned or anything like that. You might have heard that Chinese emperors, have a tendency to burn books, especially books that counter to their philosophy. Well, The Art of War wasn't one of them. And a lot of Chinese works have been lost through the generations, not through intent, but just through neglect. And so, but again, The Art of War wasn't one of them. So it's still with us. And that's why it's such a big deal. Not only is it still here, it's still being actively used. And not only in China where it originates, but it's also here in the United States. And so I thought to go through some of where it's being applied here in America. Okay, war colleges. No surprise there, it's a military work. And so it's being studied at the Naval War College, the Army War Colleges. What might be interesting is that it's required reading for all U.S. Marine Corps officers. And as you know, the Marine Corps are the first ones into battle. And so they don't like fluff, they like something that's relevant. Another principle that they believe in is leave no man behind. Sounds like a very compassionate principle, but it's also very effective. If you think about it, if you have an organization that values you enough to come back for you, you're going to work hard for that. So anyways, the reason why I know this is we interviewed a general. His name is General Charles Krulak. He was the 31st Commandant of the U.S. Marine Corps, and he tells us that he installed this policy because he knows that it would help the officers out in the field. Well, here's the bombshell here, I think. Not only is it applicable to the U.S. Marine Corps, but all of the U.S. Armed Forces. The current Secretary of Defense, Robert Gates, when he was first hired by President George W. Bush, in 2007, he had to get in front of Congress and explain to the U.S. Congress why he would be different and better than his predecessor. And so, both in March and in May, he went in front of them in public, and he quoted Sun Tzu's The Art of War. And he said, right after he cites it, he says, "This is the general approach to how we'll secure America." So, as you know, his reputation is second to none now. He is still the Secretary of Defense under the Obama administration, under a different political party. And so I'm glad, obviously, that he is using Sun Tzu's The Art of War as a part of his curriculum to secure America. It's being studied at the graduate business schools. As Mike was telling you, I received my MBA from Vanderbilt University. And in our business strategy class, we studied two concepts that came straight out of Sun Tzu's The Art of War. It's really no surprise because there are successful companies that employ Sun Tzu's The Art of War, especially in Asia, but here in America as well. The really documented ones are Oracle and Salesforce.com. The founder of Oracle, some of you might know, is Larry Ellison, and he quotes the book a lot, and he really likes the book. And I think his house is some sort of Japanese fortress or palace or something like that. He actually flew Japanese craftsmen here to America just to build his house. Anyways, he has a lot of money apparently. His protege is Mark Benioff, who founded Salesforce.com. And Salesforce, as some of you might know, is a partner of Google. And Mark said in one of the interviews, he says, Salesforce.com would look very different today if it wasn't for Sun Tzu's The Art of War. And I would like to quickly mention that Mark has a new book coming out on November the 9th. It's called Behind a Cloud, and it chronicles the beginning days of Salesforce.com. He will also outline, how you can run successful companies. So just, make sure you pre-order it from Amazon. And of course, there are other areas where Sun Tzu's The Art of War is being used, but I thought I'd put down something cool and current. Anybody a hard rock fan here? Come on, it's okay. There's a lot more than you think. Okay. Anyways, Megadeth, and I don't know if you heard about Megadeth. It's one of the more famous ones. The frontman, Dave Mustaine, his favorite book is Sun Tzu's The Art of War. And their upcoming album is called Endgame. It's a reference to chess. And so two of the songs, he says, is based off of Sun Tzu's The Art of War. So make sure you check that out on September the 15th. Okay, so we talked about famous people and high-level stuff like military. But how does it apply to you on an individual level? So what I'll do is I'll start in a general sense, and then narrow it down a little bit. Okay. So the logic is this: we all experience conflicts and competition in our lives, and we will continue to experience competition and conflicts in our lives. That, I believe, is true. Okay, so Sun Tzu had experienced war, which is the ultimate test of conflicts and competition. This is, you have to win it. There's no leeway, there's no second chances because you're talking about people's lives there. And because Sun Tzu has succeeded at warfare, the ultimate contest, and if anybody has gone through warfare, you would think everything else and related to conflict and competition would be a walk in the park. And so, at the very least, let's see what, I'm sure we can learn a thing or two about it from him. So I'm going to narrow it down a little bit for you, and how the stuff that Sun Tzu dealt with are pretty much the stuff that you guys have dealt with. And so I'm trying to relate to what he has gone through to what you are going through right now. He wasn't the CEO, he wasn't the ultimate decision maker. As I was telling you, he reported to the ruler of Wu, but he also reported to a higher ranking general. I don't know if you guys know that. So he has to work with superiors, like a lot of us. And like a lot of us, we have people reporting to us. And so he had to motivate them especially on things that, your employees, your direct reports don't like to do. If you think about it, you're talking about sending, in his case, you're sending people out into battle to risk their lives. I don't think there's any situation in business that you have to motivate people that much, but if he can handle it, I'm sure he can teach us a thing or two about that, about motivation. He had limited resources. Like I was telling you, he was working for the state of Wu. If he was working for the largest state, he would say, yeah, he was successful because he has vast resources, but he didn't, yet he was successful. And he also wanted the boss offices back. This is something that he actually talked about in The Art of War. He says, no meddling rulers. He thinks that the general has the best knowledge out in the field. He doesn't want anybody up in the ivory tower to tell him what to do. So given all that, the constraints and also the opportunities, he had to produce results. Like, I think every one of us are expected to achieve our goals and objectives. And so no excuses allowed. So because he has dealt with a lot of the stuff that I'm sure a lot of us have dealt with, maybe we should listen. Okay, so we're at a stage where I'm sure you're probably thinking, there are some things that you heard about the art of war. And so I'm going to address two concerns. One is a very common one, which is, the art of war is about ruthlessness. Why are you promoting a book that's ruthless? And here's how I feel about that. In internet terms, complete newbie. Because apparently this person has not read the book. Probably heard a little bit about it. And certainly if that person has read it, he or she didn't understand it. Because I will present to you 3 quotes from The Art of War that will counter this ruthlessness claim. Okay, he says, the good general looks upon his troops as his own children. I want to clarify something here. He's not talking about treating your employees like children. He's talking about treating them like your own children. When you're sending them out into battle, you want to make sure they're prepared and that they'll come back. They're your own children, for goodness sakes. So you're always looking out for the best interest. The second one is treat the captured soldiers well. This is prisoners of war that we're talking about here. This is 1949 Geneva Convention stuff in a 2,500-year-old book. In 500 BC, when Sun Tzu was living, you have 13 states vying for power. At any time, any one of them can be attacked. If there was a time where ruthlessness is justified, that was the time. Yet, he still believes in this principle, which is extraordinary. Do not thwart an enemy retreating home. This is him letting his enemy escape because he believes in the long term. He doesn't believe in the short term. His thinking is this: he has already accomplished this mission by winning the battle. There's no point in emphasizing revenge, emphasizing the emotional aspects of things. Let him go. Because long term, he's not creating any more enemies. Short term, yes, they might be causing him trouble later on, but long term, he's not creating any more enemies and not inciting hatred. A lot of cynics might say, oh, the reason why he's letting them go is because it's very hard to destroy him because they'll fight to the death. But my point is, my reply to that would be, you can still destroy him because they'll cause you trouble later on. But again, Sun Tzu was thinking long term. And I believe this is the problem in the Middle East, by the way, because a lot of people now are so focused on the short term, killing as many of their people as possible. Yet they don't realize the long term, inciting and creating generations of hatred. So Sun Tzu was very well aware of this, and I think it would have been good where, a lot more people can listen to Sun Tzu here. Okay, the second concern might be about deception. Yes, the Art of War talks about deception. And this is, I'm going to illustrate why it would still be justified. Okay, scenario number one is this. You trick the enemy into not attacking you because through deception. You're appearing stronger than you really are, let's say, something like that. Okay, so that's deception. Scenario number two is you're completely honest about things. Hey, you're here, look at me. And if you happen to be weaker than your enemy, he's going to go attack you. So which scenario is most humane? The point I'm trying to drive here is this. Deception itself is not bad. It just depends on the situation. And this is analogous to the game of basketball. Because if you're trying to go for the basket and you're going to fake to the right, and so that it draws all of your opponents to the right, but then you're going to sidestep to the left to go to the basket like Michael Jordan untouched. Or that's deception. Or you can be completely honest and go straight to the basket, and so that would require you to elbow your way in, knocking people down, and if you're lucky, you're going to get to the basket. Well, which method is most effective, which is most elegant, and would draw the least amount of hatred? Okay, so don't get me wrong, Sun Tzu is all about winning, but only winning wisely, because here's why. Short term, not at any and all cost. When you're presented with an opportunity and to gain victory, but if it's costly, he would say, just wait it out, make sure the timing's right, just wait for the right moment. No Pyrrhic victories. Pyrrhic victories are victories that you gain. You still have victory, but it's going to cost you. He doesn't believe in that. There has to be a net benefit there. So I thought I'd quote this from The Art of War. To gain 100 victories in 100 battles is not the highest excellence. To subjugate the enemy's army without doing battle is the highest of excellence. So by anybody's account, winning 100 battles straight, I mean, how much better can you do than that? That's extraordinary. But Sun Tzu says, there is something better. It's winning without ever fighting. I think that's both humane and smart, because here's why. When you're winning 100 battles straight, which is pretty extraordinary, are you really gaining all that much? Meaning, there's a huge cost to battling. There's always a cost. All you know for sure is this: if you can win without resorting to battle, your gains are full. And if there's cost, there's going to be very little cost, so your gains are almost all full. So this is, in business terms, this is almost like you want to run a big company or you want to run a profitable company. This is like return on investment, return on assets, and capital. So that's what he's talking about here. Okay, so just drive home the point. So you have sales of $1 billion. That's awesome. But what's the cost? If the cost is $1.1 billion, not as impressive. Okay. Sun Tzu starts out The Art of War discussing 5 factors. And these are the factors which would determine whether you'll win or face defeat. And I thought it would be interesting to review them with you here. Okay, the first factor is the way, or the Tao. I don't know if you guys know about the Tao. This is Sun Tzu's own definition of the Tao, or the way. This is you, your superiors, and the people who report to you, all on the same page. You're all aligned to go towards a single mission. So if you're all doing that, guess what? The chances of gaining victory is increased. The second factor is heaven, which is an environment. Sun Tzu's heaven is more into weather because it's a military issue. But in business, it might be about the U.S. economy, something you have completely no control over, but something that you have to deal with. Ground. This is your environment, but it's more immediate. This is your market, your industry. So even though you can't really control it, you can maneuver around it. Meaning, Google is not going to be in clothing retailing anytime soon. That's not your strength. That's not your weaknesses. It won't accentuate your strengths or negate your weaknesses. You're going to focus on search. You're going to focus on cloud computing, that type of thing. So it's within your control in that sense. Okay, so the fourth factor is the general. That's you, the leader. And I voted it because we'll discuss it in the next slide. Okay, the fifth factor is law. This is whether everybody's trained, whether they've been practicing and controlling down expenses. So that's what law is about. So, okay, so let's talk about general a little bit. This is the leader. And I thought it would be cool to highlight this because I believe it's the centerpiece of the 5 factors. Okay, so here are the 5 attributes of general. It's wisdom, credibility, benevolence, courage, and discipline. I mean, when's the last time you've seen something like this? I mean, if someone were to have these 5 attributes, would you not follow this person to the ends of the earth? And if you have these 5 attributes, wouldn't anyone want to follow you to the ends of the earth? And so, formally or informally, CEO or not, if you have these 5 attributes, you are indeed the leader and you're helping drive the company towards victory. Okay, thought I'd highlight this as well. Okay, here's another reason why Sun Tzu can help you. He also discusses ego and emotion. If you've been in business and you've been around the block in business a few times, you know ego and emotions at inappropriate levels can kill your career. And if you run your own business, it can kill your fortune. And so, this is what Sun Tzu says. Those angry will be happy again, and those wrathful will be cheerful again. But a destroyed nation cannot exist again. The dead cannot be brought back to life. What he's saying here is this. Your emotions and your egos are all temporary. Okay, and he says, don't act upon it immediately, because if you do act upon it, those actions will create permanent consequences. Yeah, you might say you're sorry, but nobody would forget. But there might be even worse consequences later on. He's also saying this: before doing battle, in the temple one calculates and will win. This is meaning if you have a major decision you need to make, go to a quiet place like the grotto over here, somewhere quiet, because it is literally impossible for you to make a rash decision there. You will be more aligned with reality. And so you can make better decisions there. So the takeaway is this. You might have a very tough problem ahead of you. You might face a lot of issues. But Sun Tzu says you can handle it. Because if you stay calm and cool in a quiet place, you can handle it. And even if you don't feel like it, because it's worse enough that you have all these enemies out there competing with you. The worst thing you can do is become your own enemy. He also discusses the environment. He thinks it's so important that he devotes 2 entire chapters out of 13 chapters on the environment, mostly on ground, as I discussed previously. So basically what he's saying is here, study it, know it, and most of all, adapt to it. Okay, so in these 2 chapters, he's discussing about 16 grounds, and he says, okay, here's the specific grounds, here's the description of this ground, here's how you can react to it and approach it. So very specific, but then he has this chapter called 9 Changes. 9 changes meaning infinite changes. He's saying there will be times when you will experience something that is unprecedented. You've never seen it before. What he's saying is this: do what's most appropriate, and if need be, to be effective, break the rules to be effective. And so the takeaway is this: yes, learn from history, understand history, and learn from it. But make sure you use your brain in unprecedented future situations. So I thought I'd conclude and summarize by putting Sun Tzu in a nutshell. And I'll be talking about 3 concepts here. Okay, so the first concept is to control yourself. Because there's nobody else you can control but yourself. You can't control other people. Certainly you can't control the environment. But if you can control yourself, you can have influence on people around you. Whether they're your friends or your enemies. Okay, you adapt to your environment, and you know you're adapting to your environment well if it accentuates your strengths and it negates or minimizes your weaknesses. And so what it does is it gives you power and effectiveness to deal with all the things you have to deal with, especially around other people. Okay, the third one I think is most important is you never sell out your principles. These are the non-negotiables that you go into a mission for. There's a reason why you're accomplishing this mission, but you're not going to ever touch this non-negotiable item, whatever it might be. Here's what he says. He says, the general who does not advance to seek glory, or does not withdraw to avoid punishment, but cares for only the people's security and promotes the people's interests, is the nation's treasure. What he's saying here is this: set aside your ego, set aside your emotions, focus on your goal, focus on gaining that victory, because guess what? Once you get that victory, your reputation is secure. It'll take care of itself. So in other words, and in Google's terms, you can fill in the blank, or you can be successful without doing evil. And the bottom line is this: do what works for you and vanquish the critics, the naysayers, and the evildoers. Because the best way to answer and vanquish a critic is to win or obtain victory under your own terms. So, anyways, to learn more about Sun Tzu's The Art of War, make sure you check out suntzu.com. We've been doing this for 10 years now, and I hope you can stop by. Anyways, this is the question and answer section. I'm sure I know one person has a question, but anyways, does anybody have any questions?
Well, mine's kind of vague and broad. I was just wondering about, you mentioned that you think the principles in Sun Tzu's book could end war. So I'm curious to hear you elaborate on that, I guess.
I'm sorry, the principles are on war, you said?
Could eliminate war.
Oh, can eliminate war. I think I quoted a few quotes from The Art of War where it can help in warfare. But here it is. I mean, okay, we'll always have conflicts. We'll always have competition. You can't prevent anger. You can't prevent a lot of these. What the Art of War does, and what Sun Tzu is really good at, is he approaches it from the reality standpoint. He's not a tree hugger or peace-loving guy. What he does is he describes it, he studies it, and by knowing what conflict and what causes conflict, he's showing you how to best approach it, how to end it, and not only that, how to prevent it. It's not, excuse me, it's not unlike cancer. You know, you ever seen these cancer research places? They're studying the cancer. They're not talking about, all these things. Well, no, they're studying the cancer. They're studying the problem, like Sun Tzu is studying conflict. Mm-hmm. That's how you'll get to the answer. That's how you'll find a cure for whatever is ailing society. So that's why I believe, even though it is on the art of war, it is on war, certainly it is about war, it just doesn't just describe war, but it also gives you a solution to war.
So are you saying that you believe that there is an actual solution available to eliminate war?
Oh,
now?
absolutely.
Or you think that this is just something that could be figured out by studying war?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people can resolve conflicts and competition and succeed at competition without ever having to read this book. I'm not saying that you have to read this book to know the answer. All I'm saying is this is a way for you to learn about it in a more structured manner. You certainly, through your experience, and these are fundamentals, truths, as I would say. It's been tested through 2,500 years. So by this time, if it's still being used, there's something to it that just, it sounds nice. Because like I said, this is the U.S. military still using this book, and it gives them a pretty good approach as to warfare. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think as a kid that I read this, it's not really that long.
It's
really
not
approachable.
Yes. Absolutely. It is 13 chapters, and you can literally read it in an afternoon. But like a game of Go or a game of anything, it's very easy to learn, and read it. I'd say it's straightforward enough for you to understand it, but there are some nuances to it where it'll take some time, But yes, it's straightforward enough for you to read it in an afternoon.
So I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if you're associated with any existing book out there or not. So maybe it's not a question, but the last time I tried to read Sun Tzu, it was actually quite a heavy read because the version that I had picked up had included like all the historical references. So like you're reading it, but then it's always placing it in context of everything that was going on in China at the time. It made it kind of feel like you got lost in the book. Which version would you recommend? I know there's several.
Yes, I might be biased because I actually have my own version. That book that Mike was holding up was created by me and the editors of Sonshi.com. Because we know what that's like, because that's why we created Sonshi.com in the first place. Like I said, I'm more of the user, the liaison between the scholars and the general reader. As far as, basically, we have all of the top scholars. Was it a red book that you were?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Writing.
Ralph Sawyer, he is part of Sonshi.com. Basically, every scholar that's ever written The Art of War, the major ones, the ones that you see out in the bookstore, well, they have helped us or are supportive of our website. So anybody alive out there, except Samuel Griffith, is another one, but of course he died already. Anyways, yes, I know what you mean. But I think in those type of books, it's great because for someone like me who's read The Art of War so many times, those type of things are really great. But for a beginner, it would be better to have it annotated, and that's what a lot of books are about too. something that we've done in 2008 is for every verse, we actually explain what this verse means, and not only that, how it can be applicable to everyday life. So I understand, but there are certain people that really would appreciate the historical background on the Art of War. It might not be the best book to start with.
Yeah, no, I got about halfway through it, and I was like,
Oh, Ralph Sawyer, boy, he went to MIT, he went through Harvard, so he's a regular scholar.
It was way neat. Yeah, I think it'd be better as a secondary reference.
Oh, absolutely, he's great, yeah. Anybody else? Oh, yes. Yes, ma'am.
So what was your interest in this to begin with? Like, how did you sort of start on this journey that now you've been doing for 20 years?
Like I quickly mentioned, Vietnam was a war-torn country, and so the subject of war have fascinated me. Although, when I was young, when I first picked up the book, it wasn't a heavy interest of mine because I was still a teenager at the time. But I'll tell you, once I picked it up and once I started reading it, you get a sense that, wow, this is an incredible book, because not only does it talk about warfare, which is, it turns a lot of people off. I mean, I can understand that very much. But at the same time, the book has this strange way of turning it around and say, hey, I understand this stuff. I understand the conflict and the competition. But here's how you can approach it in a peaceful manner. And that's really what Sun Tzu is about. I mean, who else would promote something like winning without doing battle and say this is the best skill? Never mind about this guy who's won 100 battles straight, because he's not the highest skilled general. Someone who's probably not be as famous because he's not winning all these huge battles. That's what Sun Tzu, that's the type of person Sun Tzu would value. So a lot of times, in the history books, you might be hearing about, all these great generals winning all these great battles. But a lot of times you have to wonder to yourself, are they really the best? In Sun Tzu's mind, that might not be the case. So that in a way, that's how I got interested. And then it kind of built up from there, and it actually took me 10 years to actually fully understand it. Even then, I'm still learning from other people. And so after 10 years, this is in 1999, I started Songshi.com. And so it's been now in the total 20 years. And so it's just something that, hey, this is a great book. I thought it was very important. And so we got together with a bunch of people, and so we're still here. Yes, sir.
I noticed the title of the talk, the subtitle was Spirituality of Conflict.
Oh, yes.
I was wondering, is that related to the effect of going through conflict, like the experience of it on the individual in terms of growth and development, or I was curious what the aspect was.
It's interesting because that is the subtitle of my book, The Art of War, Spirituality for Conflict. And, it's probably, the way I was thinking about it is a lot more mundane. It's like, okay, so here's a very tough topic, which is conflict. It's something that you don't normally talk about, but that's part of life, you see, because things, if you win all, it's like, I think there was a Twilight Zone show about this. This guy was winning all the time, and he got so bored. It's not a very fun life, but conflict is part of life, and how you approach it. You can approach it in an angry way, in a very emotional and egotistical way, or you can approach it spiritually, which is a lot more holistic, and where you can kind of separate yourself from the event. It's kind of like, how can I describe it? It's almost like a video game, You're presented with all these issues and problems, how can you approach it? And so that's what spirituality is about. It's not some metaphysical stuff. I'm not into that. I'm more into the practical stuff. And so...
Right, sure. But I mean, as a practical matter, do you address or deal with the fact that, in my mind, conflict in some way is almost like doing strength training, for the muscles is, it's something that's difficult that you engage in, and it in a way breaks you down, but also grows you at the same time. To me, I guess conflict seems like could have that effect on you as a person.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the worst thing that you can do, I have a child, the worst thing you can do is to put your kid in a bubble. That person needs to be prepared because, so when you're experiencing all sorts of conflicts, kind of like what Sun Tzu went through, the more conflicts you go through, the better you are at approaching it, at fine-tuning your approach to conflicts, especially competition. It's intense competition. And so nobody's perfect the first time. And I'm not saying that for you to master, you have to read The Art of War. I mean, this stuff has been around forever and ever. But Sun Tzu had his approach, and he was very successful at doing that. And here's how he learned it through all of his experiences. Why don't you learn that and then, obviously learn from your experiences? That's why he has that chapter 9 changes. He's saying, okay, here's what I'm describing to you, all these grounds. But you know what? Ignore all that if you find something that is completely different from these 16 grounds, and use your brain and do what's most appropriate, even if you have to break the rules. And that's the beauty of The Art of War. He's not into this dogma or doctrine type of thing, and that's the beauty of that one chapter is, do what is most appropriate because you have the ability to know what the answer is. It's just being in a quiet place and not reacting to it immediately. Okay. Anybody else? Come on, these are easy answers here. Okay. Wow.
Did you grow up in Atlanta, or?
I was born in Saigon, like what I said, and I came here when I was 7 years old to Seattle, Washington. That's where I got my bachelor's degree, is at the University of Washington. And then later on, I worked at Georgia Pacific. They actually have a GP center. Their headquarters is here in Atlanta. That's how I ended up here in Atlanta. Okay. That's it. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.